Hello and welcome to another episode of the podcast. And for this episode, I have two very special guests with me, and they are Professor George Matthew and Professor Victor Shah. Both of them are faculty of marketing at Jindal Global Business School. And along with that, they host a very interesting podcast which goes by the name of, you can guess it, Podcast with Professors. And there they are talking about some very interesting and innovative stuff. A bit of fumble there, but I hope so you guys pardon with me for that. And they are talking about international space laws, they are talking about AI, they are talking about marketing over there. So you guys should definitely check it out. And with that, I would like to welcome my guest on today's podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Arun, for inviting us. Looking forward.
Thank you, Arun.
Definitely.
Looking forward to the discussions.
Definitely, sir. Actually, whenever I call upon professors on my podcast, I feel a bit intimidated. Just feels like a viva for me. So just hoping for a very pleasant experience. So, sir, since both of you are in the world of academia and especially marketing, my first question to you guys would be which brand, according to you, if there is any in contemporary India, which captures the message of marketing, like what marketing is and how it should be done exactly?
Right. So, okay. So I'll give a go ahead with this. So to start with, what marketing is, right? So at the fundamental, when you talk of marketing, it's about putting your customers at the center, understanding them, and with the understanding that you have, understand. So when you say understand them, basically understanding what are their problems, what are the pain points that they're suffering from, and then you solve those pain points, okay, but at a scale and in a profitable way. And that's the important distinction here, right? So if you look around us, there are so many problems that you'll find for sure, but not every problem would qualify to be translated into a business venture, right? How do we identify whether a given problem can be translated into a business venture or not? Is this two things: one, can we be profitable, and can we do that profit at a scale, right? If those two conditions are not met, that essentially does not make for a business venture. Now, where does marketing comes in is that once you have identified the problem, you have solved for it, for example, through your product, through your offering, whatever means you have adopted for that. Once you solve that, you obviously have to communicate to that to your target audience, right? If I make the best product in the world, for example, I always say this: I can make the best food in the world, but if no one tastes it, no one would ever know that it is the best or the worst food. Same for any product, any service, any offering that you make. You have to communicate to your target audience. That's the first part where marketing comes in. Second is, uh, it's not just you who perhaps have identified the problem. There can be many others who have identified their problem and perhaps is much better at executing it, solving the problem better. Why should your customer come to you or buy from you and not from someone else? Right? So how do you differentiate yourself from anyone else in the market? That's the second part where marketing comes in. That you also have to not just communicate, you also have to show that why you're better and different from anyone else in the market. So that at a very fundamental level, what marketing is. Now, we talked of a brand that exemplifies marketing. I would say there are many. Right? Any brand that has been successful, that has really, I mean, in a way, has built a sustainable business over the years, is essentially good in marketing. One brand that comes to my mind is Apple. So if you know of Apple, people just flock on lines. I mean, I was seeing that. I guess it was in Dubai or somewhere. People were crazy. I mean, they were just waiting on lines. It was like a mad rush of people just to get their iPhone first and be one of the first users of iPhone. I mean, you cannot buy this. No brand can buy this madness. It's this is something that you build over the years, right? And if you can build that emotion, understand one thing: human beings do not make decisions rationally. Human beings are always driven by emotions. We make decisions emotionally and then we rationalize it. So as brands, as marketeers, the focus should always be to drive the emotional aspect of human beings, right? So Apple has done that really, really well. It cannot happen in a day, it cannot happen in a day, it cannot happen in a month, it does not happen in a year. It Over time, Apple has been able to create that mad phenomenon around the brand, and as a result, you bring in any product in the market. I mean, you do not even have to spend any much money on customer acquisition cost. I mean, the CAC is pretty much one of the lowest that can be there in the industry, right? So for me, Apple is one brand that magnifies in the Western context, right? And in Indian context, there are many, but maybe I'll leave up to George to fill in that gap. Yeah,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me sort of dissect a few things that Professor Victor has mentioned, or let me call him Victor for now. Right. So,
yeah.
so the multiple things which Victor has mentioned. One was about building something at scale and having a solution for something which is at scale. Right. That is definitely true, and that is what is required. But at the same time, technology currently, the way it is progressing, it allows you to go to something called a segment of one, right? Which is that you can actually, with technology, and it need not be from a product angle, you can serve a segment of one also. Right now it is fairly theoretical and conceptual, right? You can, right now, serving a one customized customer is still not a very profitable business, but going forward we can think of customizing to a single person and product. And another thing that I would want to disagree with Victor is about creating, if you create a product, right? There's the age old saying, if you if you build a better mousetrap, right, the world will beat a path to your door, right? So you might be in a jungle somewhere, and if you build a better mousetrap, the world will come to you. What that implies, and how I connected back to what Professor Victor was saying, is that if you are able to uniquely serve someone's very pressing problem, right, then people will come to you. But because that level of uniqueness, that level of um, problem solving is difficult, most of our products meet certain requirements, they're not the perfect product for us, right? Therefore, um, we need to go out into the market and communicate, right? Now, going to the example that Professor Victor shared, which was Apple, right? A lot of us, a lot of common people tend to think of marketing as the outward communication that is happening, right? And because of which, um, when we think of marketing, we think of a lot of brands that we often see. But marketing is not that, right? Marketing is about understanding the customer, the customer's requirements, creating a product around it, creating a moat around your product proposition, which others find very difficult to match, right? You've often heard debates about the specifications of an Apple phone being much below the specifications of an Android, but then still an Apple phone performs much better than an Android, right? So therefore it is the entirety, marketing is the entirety of the product that you're offering. The communication is just one aspect of it. So while I agree with Victor on the fact that Apple is one of the best marketing companies, um, to put things in perspective from an Indian consumer's perspective, I'd say Amul, right, where the product does not do any customization. The product is a plain vanilla uh, breakfast item, right? ठीक है, set aside all the Instagram people who are talking about heart attack this, heart attack that, right? Where they add oodles of Amul butter to any product and make them tasty. But other than that, and Amul, through its basic communication, the simplicity of the communication, the presence of that communication, right? By presence, I mean the way it is relevant at the moment, on the day that that advertisement has been taken out, you would be able to relate to that advertisement, right? And the fact is, they use a very simple communication. They use a little bit of word jugglery, right? And a little bit of, and there is visual also. All that appeals to customers, and therefore Amul is my Indian bet on great advertising, right? And it's not even done by a big agency, right? The fact is, Amul advertising is not done by a big agency. It used to be a two-man team. The person who started all that advertising, he died recently, just last year, right? I think beginning of this year, and his son is carrying on with that work. And the beauty of the of all that creativity is that they have been able to continue for such a long time with such interesting advertisements which we remember, right?
Definitely. I mean, this is very great. I never knew that only two people could create such magic with marketing. Every time there's an event in India or globally, even the images or the word jugglery, a very nice phrase that you use, they come out with it's really a rage. Now, coming back to what Victor sir had mentioned earlier, the rage around Apple. I just read, I guess yesterday, that there was a man who stood for 17 hours in Ahmedabad, I guess, to buy an iPhone. Now, I don't know what amount of money or what can really buy this kind of loyalty or something. And as a student of maybe psychology, and I love psychology and the way it really impacts all of us, like you very nicely said that we first decide emotionally maybe, and then we rationalize it later, maybe a sort of confirmation bias. uh, but this is phenomenal at the way that how this works. Now, I would just come back to one of my observations. I was just traveling in a cab a few weeks back, I guess, and I was looking at all these billboards that were all around me. And the ones that really captured my attention were very simple, like a monochromatic background with a single color with clearly legible letters, A color, and सामने उसके there were big letters written on top of that. So then it just struck me that this actually resembles a very good YouTube thumbnail. If you look at good YouTube thumbnails, they are very plain in their background color, one color in the background, and very bold and legible letters in very large size. So I would like to ask you that how do you feel that fundamentally marketing has changed in terms from the time brick and mortar marketing, like when there were shops and we were all around going with those billboards, bade billboards in the chauras and all that stuff, to today's world where we have both of them, brick and mortar to digital marketing. How have things changed according to you?
Okay. Okay. So I guess you are asking how has marketing changed from brick and mortar to the online e-commerce
or,
space, right?
or maybe how both of them are currently coexisting right now, just
Correct.
what is
Right.
their fundamental?
So, right. So, if we look at how brick and mortar, I mean, that's the traditional one, and all of us have experience with this. And today's world, of course, e-commerce, online, all of us similarly have experience with it. Now, when I look at e-commerce or the online space, there are two kinds of problems that any retail solves for us, right? One is a need problem, and the other is a convenience problem. Your e-commerce solves the convenience problem, right? To start with, it started solving the convenience problem. That rather than me going to shop outside, why can't it be put in my, I mean, why can't it be delivered at my home, right? And if you look at Western countries, there many people lived in the countryside, right? And going, it's not like us where you have mom and pop stores at every nook and corner. It's not that, right? So e-commerce model actually started there and basically try to solve the convenience problem. Today, given it has become a habit for us, for many of us, it looks like a need problem, right? I mean, for me personally, it has become in a way I'm dependent on online shopping because I just don't feel like going out and shop unless there are a lot of other things also that I need to do. So maybe I'll just go to the mall and pick something up. But other than that, it has in a way become a need problem. But fundamentally, e-commerce was always there to solve the convenience problem. Now, when you understand that your business is solving a convenience problem, your entire business model around it changes. So I'll explain how. So before that, let me just tell you that any business provides value. Ultimately, it makes money because it provides value. And when you talk of value, there are broadly, and again, broadly, there are two kinds of value. One is your utilitarian value, where you, based on the utility of the product that or the service that you've given, people pay you for it, right? Based on the functional utility. And the other is called your hedonic value. That is based on the experience that you've created. Be you made their life easier, simpler, enhanced experience. You charge money for it, right? So any big ticket item, if you look at it, it's really solving the hedonic value. It's the experience value. I mean, I can buy a 5 lakh rupee car. I can also buy a 40 lakh rupee car. Why should I go for a 40 lakh? I can buy the same stuff for 20 rupees. I can buy the same stuff for 500. Why should I pay that premium, right? So if a customer who is willing and able to pay that premium is looking much more than just getting functional value. They're looking for experience. They're looking much beyond that, right? So for the online space, they are solving a convenience problem where the focus should be more on experience, right? I mean, if you look at Blinkit or Zepto, 10-minute delivery, no one needs 10-minute delivery, at least in our context, right? But yet people are buying there. Why? Because it's a convenient thing to do, right? So now, when you understand that I'm in the business of convenience and not need, your entire business model around it will be about solving for experience, right? Starting from your customer on your platform, how the customer shops, the cataloging, right? The delivery part of it, the packaging, everything has to be built around convenience and around convenience and experience. And if you can do that, people will pay a premium to you. That they will do, right? Because at the end of the day, this online stores are not catering to entire India, at least as of now. Okay, they are catering to the top 5%. I mean, and by catering I mean their target audience, right? Yes, there are people who also shop beyond, who do not fall in the top 5%, but the chunk of the business, right? And I don't know specific numbers, but I'm pretty sure more than 80% of the revenue that comes in is from the top 5%, right? And that's again a conservative estimate. So if you ask me how marketing has changed, right now I see marketing and where the real money is being built is by solving the convenience problem, is by building great experiences. Kunal Shah of Trade, I mean, he has gone on multiple platforms to say that all the money, the profitable businesses that are there, they actually make money on that top 2-3% people that of India, top 2-3%. So India as a mass market is a fallacy. The moment you start thinking about that, automatically the way you conduct business will be different, and that, I mean, it's fallacy. That's the reason why a lot of businesses fail, right? So brick and mortar was a more of a solving for a need that started with that. So marketing around it is more about utilitarian value. People are okay with not having proper catalogs, packaging. It's okay. People will still buy it. But when you, as you come to the online store, you have to be really, you really focus on the experience part of it, and that's where the big money is. Right?
Okay.
George sir, would you like
Let,
to add on it?
yeah. Let me have comments on two things. One is the billboard advertising that you talked about. I wanted to say something on that. And second, I'll go on to the transition from brick and mortar to digital marketing. When you look at a billboard, right? The problem that used to exist earlier in Indian marketing or billboard outdoor communication was that a lot of agencies used to take the creative that was created for maybe a print advertisement and adapt that to a billboard, right? But when you look at a print advertisement, you have that in front of you at a very short distance. You have time to spend on that billboard, right? But on that advertisement. But when you look at a billboard, and which is very similar to what you mentioned about a YouTube thumbnail also, my attention span for that thumbnail is very low, right? It is something that I might just look at while I'm scrolling, right? Similarly, a billboard is something that I would look at when I'm passing by. I hardly get a second, right? If you try to give me a lot of brand communication on that, you will fail, right? But what are the things that actually become attractive, which catch the eye? Simple communication, as you mentioned, right? Maybe a plain background with some mnemonic which shows that it is the brand, and there is, you're not trying to communicate too much, you're just trying to make people aware of the brand. Recently, in I think in Bombay, Havels did a very interesting take on a billboard where they created Ganpati Bappa using small fans, right? So it was a large billboard, and they made a mosaic with fans to create, to symbolize Ganpati Bappa. Now, the interesting thing about that was that there was just the Havells branding on one corner, and then there was this image which had been created with multiple small fans, right? So there was motion in that image, which attracts your eye while you're passing by, and at the same time you see that, okay, from a distance you see it's Ganpati Bappa, but then when you look for that extra quarter second more, you realize, okay, that those are actually fans moving, and then that additional maybe fraction of a second you also see in the background that there is a Havells logo. That is enough, right? For Havels, they're not trying to tell people that we make very efficient fans. They don't need to tell people in using that platform that our fans consume low power. They don't need to do anything. What they're doing is relating to the public, catching their eye, telling them Havels is equal to fans. Right. So that's the idea of billboard advertising, of outdoor advertising. You need to be in marketing, especially you need to be aware of your, and you need to see things from your consumer's perspective. If you, as a brand owner, when you look at a hoarding, you are going to stand there and look at the hoarding, right? But as a consumer, consumers don't stand around and look at hoardings. So when you start thinking from the consumer's perspective, that is when communication becomes more effective. uh, Talking about the transition, right, which Professor Victor has very nicely um, covered, and he's brought in all these different aspects. My my take is slightly different from a different angle, right? I'm taking a different perspective. There is a saying of some good marketer advertiser who said that I don't know, of the 50% of the marketing budget that I spend, 50% is getting wasted, but I do not know which 50%, right? So in traditional marketing, the money that you're spending, you do not have full control over that money. You do not have any control over the effectiveness of that money, which is not there in digital. In digital also, I'm not saying that you have 100% control, all your metrics are there, and that you can get that information. It is much better. You can do much better targeted advertising and also record responses to those advertising. If I show you a banner and you click on that, for me, that is a definite thing that you have seen that advertisement and you have taken an action. My communication was good enough for you to take an action. If I send you an email, a marketing email, and which says for more information click here, and you click on that, right? For me as a marketer, that's great information. Okay, so Arun saw my communication. He was interested, right? Otherwise, if he was not interested in what I was offering, he would have just closed the email and moved on, or deleted the email. But if he has taken an action, that means he has some interest. If he does, he buy, I can trace that also, right? Because from an email, I'll take you to a landing page. From that landing page, if you do a transaction, I have a record of that. If you don't do a transaction, that's still very good information for me, right? Because I know Arun came in as a solid potential customer. Maybe right now what I'm offering does not appeal to him. So after a few days, few weeks, something, I might send you another communication, change something slightly in that. Maybe offer you a discount. Now does Arun buy, right? I'm able to track each and every step of this. Okay, it I changed the price, Arun still did not buy. Let me try something else. Let me maybe provide different colors in this. Does Arun take any action when it comes to that? Now, based on all that information, I can then create a product which appeals perfectly to Arun, right? Which was not there in traditional marketing, right? So that's the beauty of digital marketing.
Wow, this was perfect. I mean, from what you have both said right now, it just changed my fundamental view. First, what Professor Victor said is like, I think I also carried this false assumption maybe that when products are made, India is a mass consumer market. That is what we always hear, at least from my perspective. And when you said that, right, I think only 2 to 3% of India would really have that disposable income for which all these products are being catered to. Right? I mean, so that is why I think that many of the things when we target it for a large audience, but at the end of the day, there are few people with that purchasing power who can actually buy that stuff. So that is a very great
I, I-
revelation
I'll
for me.
just qualify, absolutely. So I'll just qualify it a bit here. See, when you say the money is there in the top 2 to 3%, it does not mean the rest of India is not buying. They are buying. That's there, right? But then there's something called profit pool, right? Which is it that companies are actually making money from? Those there are people who buy, okay, and they're great for our active users, daily users, monthly users, DAO, MAO, all this term that you speak in digital parlance. But the point is that what is the profit pool that we are catering to? And there you will find it's just the top three, four, at max the 5% who actually forms a profit pool of most of these companies. Right.
Actually,
So
I will
that's where.
second you what you just said, because I come from rural Uttarakhand, so my native place is there. So I even see that people are ordering their stuff from Flipkart, Amazon. Yes, the delivery time is not as great as say Delhi, where you can maybe get your delivery the very same day. There you get those stuff like 5 days, 7 days with a lag of that time period, but still people are ordering. Yeah, but when we talk in terms of profit, maybe yeah, then what maybe you're saying is perfectly bang on. And what George sir just mentioned, I guess it was David Oligui who said in the line of something like, when you are creating a message like some in terms of these billboards or thumbnails, you are catering to a moving parade, not to a classroom, something in lines
Mhm.
of that. So
So,
yeah, that is it. That's very great to even listen to. Now, so I would like to ask you is, now you guys are professor, you are teaching students, you know how attention span is when one is in the role of student, and I'm guilty of the same. So even in the world of consumers, the attention span, I think it was 9 seconds when it was last recorded, and maybe who knows 6 7 seconds right now. So how do you think marketing is catering to this, and what according to you, if something comes in your mind, who is perfectly using this lessened attention span for their advantage, if something comes to your mind?
Yeah, so okay, so that's right. Attention span, of course, is a problem. I think you talked to 9 second. I read, yeah, it was around 8 9 seconds, which is less than that of a goldfish. That's being said. But I mean, one of the businesses that's really doing it well is, I mean, it started with TikTok. You have see Instagram Reels coming in, YouTube Shorts coming in. They're just catering to the attention span, the attention span deficit you have. So you give them fast content at the snap of fingers. Now, the way I look at it is that, see, when you talk of attention span, yes, people's attention span are getting lower, but that does not mean you cannot sell a 3 hour movie. That does not mean you cannot sell a 250 pages book. That does not mean you cannot sell 8 to 10 hours of web series, right? It's people are buying those things, right? So the question is, where is the difference? The difference is that when it comes to, you have to understand that attention span, it's not something that you can look uh, at a siloed sort of thing, right? For example, if you have a content out there, you have to understand that if the same kind of content with the same pitch and the prosody, if it goes on, people will lose interest very soon. Okay, maybe 8 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds at max, right? That means you have to bring in some change as the content is going on. In the same content, you have to bring in some changes. Why does podcast work? Podcasts work because you have multiple people talking, right? So for the viewer, it's like, for example, right now you're talking for say 2 minutes, I'm talking for 3 minutes, George is talking for 4 minutes. So the context keeps on changing, and that keeps it very exciting and interesting for the listener, right? So if you're building content and for whatever platform you're bringing in, you will have to ensure that the context, it keeps on changing, right? Even if you look at a 60-second reel, many people don't watch the 60 second, right? Or a 59 second for YouTube, right? Even 15 seconds people don't watch it. Doesn't mean people do not have 15-second attention span. They have. It's just that the 15 second was not interesting enough. Okay, so when you talk of creating content for marketeers, I feel rather than focusing on low attention span, you have to understand that irrespective of the attention span, whatever content you're creating, you have to make it interesting, you have to make it exciting, right? If you do not make it interesting, people will not even watch 5 seconds. And if you make it interesting, people are ready to watch it for 5 hours, right? Big movies and books, say they sell, right? And they make big money, right? So I think that's the way for marketers to look at content. You have to make it interesting, you have to keep on changing the context around it, which will give, I mean, it's the dopamine shots, right? I mean, why do we say that people's interest span go down? Because the moment it becomes boring, you do not get dopamine shots anymore, right? If you keep on make it exciting, dopamine keeps on releasing, and you'll keep like you tend to like it more, right? So I think that's how you should look at content making. Make it interesting. Does not matter what your duration is, right? Make 1 hour, make 5 hours content, but make it interesting. Yeah.
So my take on this is, it is not that short attention span is something which is very new, right? We've had situations earlier also where attention span was low, but then right now it is fairly mass, right? Everybody has a short attention span. I'll give you some examples of the past when people had short attention spans. Think of radio advertising, right? Which is heard most of the times when you're driving or when you're doing some other work, right? You don't sit in front of a radio and listen to it. I mean, at least these days, and for quite some time, people haven't been doing that. There was a time when the transistor used to be the center of the household, and people would sit in front of it and listen to the radio. But then that's that was many, many, many years ago. I don't think, Arun, you would have been even born at that time.
I was born in the era of DD Metro. I think you would
Okay.
recollect it.
Yeah,
That
I
was
was almost a teenager by that
that
time.
was
Right. So now look at FM advertising. Right. What do? They also cater to a lot of people who are on the roads, whose attention is on driving, whose attention is on whatever's traffic's around them. What are the pedestrians doing? On what gear am I driving? At what acceleration level am I at? Right. So their attention is not concentrated on the communication that's happening on the radio. What do radio advertisers do? They need to modify the pitch. They need to bring in music, and for recall, when I was in media, there used to be a saying that your brand name needs to be repeated at least 3 times in a radio advertisement for people to register that brand. Right? You hear it at the first time, you hear it somewhere in the middle, and you hear it again towards the end. Many brands, still see them doing that. Right? That is important for them to recall the brand. Another example of short attention span is children. Right? Children, when they watch something, their attention span is usually very low. Right? But when kids watch TV, do they not watch advertisements? They do watch advertisements. They watch those advertisements which are able to grab their attention. Right? Because for a child, as soon as something gets boring, they do not have any social pressure. They do not have any shame. They'll turn their back towards something which is not interesting. Right? And therefore, the advertisers on children's programs and children's television, they have also mastered this. Right? It is just about everybody else, all the other marketers, thinking in those lines and trying to get that attention. As professors, right, teaching the current generation, we face this in our classroom. Right? As soon as I start getting boring, right, as soon as my content uh, is getting too theoretical, is not relatable, my students would start switching off. Right? And while on their face they'd want to show that they're still paying attention, the blankness of their eyes tells me that, okay, now I realize I'm getting boring, I have to get their attention. Right? And which is, there are multiple tools that you can use. You can maybe use some humor. You can get into the classroom. What happens when you get in among the students? Right? When you walk around in the classroom, then you are no longer a statue standing in front and speaking. You are now speaking from among them. Right? So that change of audio that happens when you're walking around in the class, that tends to also get people's attention back. Right? So you can use multiple things. In a classroom, there are different tricks and techniques. In advertising, there are different tricks and techniques.
That's great. I think you have decoded the way, at least classroom human psychology works. I don't know, maybe I am biased towards psychology or something, but I really find it that even if you talk about the field of behavioral economics, macroeconomics, or in some other fields, that more or less we all are telling stories or catering to the human psyche and just triggering that emotion button by whatever we can. uh, for me, like for this podcast, the takeaway is like I always held this view regarding my own personal decisions and what I observe in people, as Professor Victor had said, that we first decide emotionally and then just we rationalize it with whatever information that we have at our disposal. Now what we have today is the world of AI, and I had Professor Variza Negi. She's a professor at Narsi Munji University, and we talked in depth about AI. So how do you think that AI has fundamentally changed marketing? Because in some circles, it is said that AI is not right now maybe having the kind of impact that it was supposed to have till now. In future, maybe yes, but not till the time we are speaking. So how do you view it, AI in the current parlance of marketing?
Okay, so see, when you talk of AI, right now there's a lot of buzz around it, but we have to understand that AI was there much, much long back, right? It was there, and companies have been using it. How is it different right now? Is that now we have something called generative AI. where AI is able to create content in a way much better than human beings can do, right? So with a single prompt, you can create magic in a way, right? You can create images, you can create stories, you can write books, right? So that's where AI is creating a lot of things that without, I mean, it's based on training of data, existing data that's already the human beings have created, and based on that, AI is able to create stuff that is much better than what human beings can do, right? So from AI to generative AI, and this is the phase. What is getting dangerous and where people are actually more bothered about is that the argument was that yes, AI can create all of those all of those things, but they cannot mimic human emotions. They cannot AI cannot think and feel, right? That's what sentient AI. AI is getting there, right? And now we have evidence that AI is also becoming more sentient. Okay. Now, in this context, how is marketing changing? The marketing obviously has to change because of this. Because today, a lot of the thing that you required lot many people to do for you today can be done by an AI tool. Yes, you need someone to what do you call use that AI tool for you to create the output for you, but the number of people who have been doing that same job is decreasing. Okay, now when you do that, the output is different. And when the output is different, the output is what? It's a stimulus that will be given to customers. And then when the stimulus changes, people reactions or behaviors might also change. Today, if I give you like for example, creative graphic designing, what are the first brief that is to come out? Someone has to draw something on a piece of paper with some pen, pencil, sort of. It was a starting point, right? And then people used to build over it. Today, you have a tool called Mid Journey, where the starting point is as good as as a high definition picture that you take. Okay, now you build over it, right? So you see the enormous delta that has been created in terms of the output that comes in. Okay, now when you start with that big delta, obviously it's going to disrupt a lot of things. It's going to disrupt a lot of professions. A lot many sectors are going to get disrupted. I mean, we all talk about that. For me, from a consumer perspective, since we are talking about marketing here, for me, from a consumer perspective, I see that through AI, you can create much better experiences for consumers. Okay, that's the first thing I would say because I'm restricting myself to only marketing balance. Today, marketers have much more advanced tools in their disposal to create those wonderful experiences that all of these things we have been discussing right now. Okay, you can make it more personalized for them. You can actually now on an individual basis understand people's problem, and I think this was something that Professor George was mentioning before, that personalization, the amount that we used to do before, this is going to go to another scale altogether, right? But from another perspective, what happens, because these consumers in a way are also employees, in a way their jobs are also at stake. There's also another fear, right? And when you have businesses with end customers are fearful, are not secured about their own job, that will also bring down their disposable income, not disposable income but willingness to purchase actually. So tomorrow, if I have that fear that I may lose my job, today when I go to the market, I may have a salary right now, but I may think twice before buying an expensive stuff because I'm thinking whether my job would be there or not. That in a way will have an effect on all businesses. Okay, so from a much larger context, the way I look at it is that at some point, companies, capitalism, that's what it is, that they have to come together and think to what extent should we leverage AI? I mean, should we leverage it to the extent that we are cutting down our workforce by half? Because the moment we do it, some other companies also going to do it, some other industry is going to do it, and when they do it, our eventually our end customer, their income goes down, and our business gets hampered because my customers are someone else's employees, right? So that thing has to come in. Companies have to think in government regulations at some point have to come in, right? Otherwise, the way it's going, at some point, it might well replace a lot of things that we right now are not even imagining. Okay, I know this talk about technology has been there. That whenever new technology comes, there's a lot of buzz, but gradually it fizzles down. I'm pretty sure a lot of it is true this time as well. But given the evidence that we have right now and the kind of capabilities that AI is having, this time I see it slightly different, and I think the governments, the civil society, the companies, the organizations themselves will have to come together to do something about it, right? But at least in the short term, if and by short term I mean at least in the next few years, I would say this is an opportunity for marketeers to create much more personalized, to create much better experiences for consumers, and there's a lot of money that they can earn just through this creating enhanced experiences and greater personalizations.
Now, my perspective on AI in marketing is that, just like Professor Victor said, marketing is not just that selling, is not advertising, etc. Right? It is also customer service, which is where your bots are coming in, right? Your chatbots, right? So chatbots have always been there. They've been working on maybe a limited script. Right? We've ever since the time when maybe Zomato shifted to chatbots, people's what refunds they turn to peanuts, right? So the chatbot just tells you, we'll give you a 30% discount, we'll give you a 50% discount, whereas earlier the human who used to listen to your sob story used to say, okay, we'll return you the 100% refund, right? But the fact is, AI is coming in a very large way in a lot of things. Where it is making a difference is, instead of working on a limited set of possible responses to a situation with generative AI, the AI is looking at all the information that is available there in the world, right? And using that to create its responses, which is where it is almost mimicking the responses that maybe you could expect from me if you were to ask me that question, right? Now, what is happening additionally in that is that when you have systems like generative AI, etc., which need to access the information from the entire world for all their processes, they become difficult to manage, right? The issue that is coming is that they become very difficult to manage in the sense that their energy requirements go uh, overboard, right? Now, when energy requirements go overboard, then automatically there is that law of entropy which is going to start working, and then some things are going to start to fizzle out because it requires too much energy, and therefore AI could go on that path unless they come up with maybe high performance GPUs, etc. Now, another industry which went through this tough cycle of high energy consumption, right, and is still struggling, is the blockchain industry, right, which also had some applications which could have been possible in advertising, right? Think of it using blockchain. Instead of us paying money to YouTube or to ZTV or to anybody else, we could actually pay money to the consumer, right? And that would be a fraction, right? With blockchain, you can make fractional payments also. You could actually make a fractional payment to a person and say, okay, this is an advertisement that is targeted at you. If you watch this advertisement, you also get, instead of paying the broadcaster, I'm going to pay you for watching this advertisement, right? And you could collect a lot of money through all the exposure that you're getting. But then why is that not happening? Because blockchain requires a lot of energy. And if AI also goes that way with large scale energy utilization, there is a potential problem, right? But that is a potential problem. If you do not have a requirement for large databases, general databases, and your requirement is well fulfilled and your requirement is narrow, then you could always look at narrow databases, and on that you can be fairly energy efficient, right? One area where I see a lot of potential use, and this is not at all from the consumer perspective, this is more from the advertiser perspective. There's something called programmatic advertising in digital advertising, right? Which is the automated buying and selling of advertisement space, right? Now, there you are setting a lot of the information for how that programmatic buying is happening. Now, think of a situation where an AI is overlaid over this, right? With the AI's information of a lot of customized content, with the information that it would have of advertisers or and of the audiences. If AI is overlaid over programmatic, the result would be even better efficiency, right? And that is something that maybe we can look forward to. Consumer end, etc. Professor Victor's covered. I just wanted to show you a different side of AI's application also.
That's great. Actually, I have a background in computer science, and when I view these things, especially AI, so it's kind of a black swan. I mean, it's very fun. It's fundamentally different in nature. Now, for an instance, when cloud technology came, so people were like, maybe this could change the way that we are working. Maybe this could change the way we are storing our data. But when we talk about AI, the conversation gets a little trickier. Now, I think it was BuzzFeed CEO who said this, that we are targeting that in 10 to 15 years, that AI should write, create, edit, and post all our content. So, I mean, and they have, and I think it was in May this year that AI was the fourth or fifth reason of layoffs over there. I don't remember the exact number, but in percentage, in the terms of the ranking, it's fourth or fifth over there that it caused the organizations to lay off people. Funny times that we are living in a world of transition. Let's see how it really impacts. Now,
See,
towards the end of, yeah,
Arun, if I could just interrupt in that
sure,
and
sir,
say,
sure, sir, sure, sir.
while there are a lot of apprehensions that people have about job loss, etc., related to AI, right? It is more or less making a villain out of a tool, right? AI ultimately is a tool that is helping us become better. And similarly, I mean, there was a time when computers were being introduced into banks, and you had bank employees protesting that our jobs will go. But wasn't that a world of an improvement, right? And have bank employees lost their jobs? No, they're still sitting in front of a computer and doing the transactions that we require them to. Maybe the branch sizes might have reduced, but then the number of branches have also increased, right? So therefore, overall, it is over time that we'll see how does AI actually end up benefiting everyone, because it'll ultimately, we will ensure, right, all everybody in humanity will come together and ensure that it is the better side of AI that moves forward, and we suppress the negatives.
Actually, yeah. And I think this is an argument that has been put forward since the time of printing press or industrialization, that these
True.
will cause job losses. Obviously, the nature of jobs have changed over time. I cannot imagine a time where I could work without computers. I cannot, fundamentally, because I have been born and brought up in a time where they were very much prevalent. And when we talk about uh, AI, where humanity can ensure that the brighter side of AI, let's say, comes up. So let's take an example of Chat GPT. So according to my information, Chat GPT is totally trained on internet's data, like for 2 years. If we listen that period from 21 to 23, it's trained on that data. So I think these softwares or these machines are perfect example of our own consciousness, because if it is our own data that is used to train them, then they will definitely reflect our own biasness, our own qualities and vices, maybe. So it remains a very interesting speculative matter to talk about. Now, so at the end of this conversation, I would like to, ask you if you could recommend a few books, videos, or reference points for someone who is not very well versed with marketing and would like to have a glimpse of how, things work. Any book, any videos, so that would be really great.
Okay, so one person I would strongly recommend, that anyone who wants to understand marketing, anyone who wants to understand behavior, consumer behavior, would be Rory Sutherland.
Yeah,
He is vice
definitely.
president at Ogilvy, UK. So his book, I think, is Alchemy or Alchemist. That's how it's named, Alchemy, right? There's
Yeah,
one
yeah.
book that you should read if you're really interested about human beings. So one of the fundamentals about, I mean, the best sense of this book is that not everything that is logical turns out to be ultimately the winner, right? There are many things that works out in the business world and marketing, which perhaps is not logical. It's only when the hindsight that you find, okay, that's the reason it worked. But if someone was making decision with pure logic, perhaps they would not have made the decision. And if they did not make the decision, the results would have been very different. So he talked that there are many things which defies logic. Okay, and that's the nature of human mind psychology, right? So Rory Sutherland, he has a lot of podcasts and TED talks that's there. So Rory Sutherland is one person I strongly recommend. Any book by Seth Godin, okay, one of the top marketing voices in the world, right? So there's another person I would recommend is Seth Godin. He has written a lot of books, but if you don't read the book, actually there are a lot of videos of his, and he's a very celebrated keynote speaker around the world. So there's a second book that I would there's a second person I would recommend, because these are thought leaders. Rory Sutherland, Seth Godin, these are thought leaders that all of us, because you know what, it's not just about marketing. all of us live in the society where we are connected to businesses. We are recipients of marketing efforts of some company or the other. So if you do not understand what is happening, many of the times you can be tricked, and it can be tricked in the wrong way. Right. So I mean, if you're persuaded in the right way, it's okay. But sometimes we tend to get persuaded in the wrong way. So it's important to understand how human beings behave, our own biases, our own thoughts. So that's the second person I would say. And the third and the final one from my side would be any book written by Dan Ariely. Okay, so Dan Ariely is one of the foremost behavioral economists around the world. Dan Kahneman obviously is a Nobel laureate. His book obviously is there, Thinking Fast and Slow. But one person I really love reading, because his books are very lucid when you read. Right, it's very fast read. I mean, writing a non-fiction book which as a page turner is extremely difficult, and somehow Dan really does that every time. So for me, three persons, and all of them have their own books and videos: Rory Sutherland, Seth Godin, and Dan Ariely. Right, that would be my recommendation.
Okay. So I would also agree with many of the books that Professor Victor has suggested. Seth Godin's All Marketers Are Liars, right? The title of the book itself is like clickbait, right? You start thinking, why would someone write a book where they're saying marketers are liars, right? But then he turns around. He doesn't actually call marketers liars. Read the book and you'll get to know. Right? That's a very interesting book. With Dan Ariely, Predictably Irrational, right? Predictably Irrational was one of his very famous books. My only problem with Dan Ariely is, if you've read one, you've read most of his work, right? Because he keeps rehashing those stories that he has, and therefore Predictably Irrational is a good introduction to Dan Ariely, and I guess somewhere his contribution for me ends at that. um, Nudge by Thaler, right? Richard Thaler's Nudge, which is again behavioral economics. Very similar, similar book is Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, Kahneman and Tversky, right? Those, I mean, these are people who have established the area of behavioral economics, got that area recognition among common people like you and me, right? When I read these books, I wasn't a professor in marketing, right? I was also someone in the corporate. So very relatable books that these are. Another person who's controversial, in the sense that in controversial in academic circles, is Malcolm Gladwell, right? Malcolm Gladwell writes very interesting books, and all his books, Outliers, and there are multiple of those. Now, all of those books are very interestingly written. The only problem why academics tend to criticize him a lot is that he'll take a piece of data, a fact, and then he'll build a story around that, a lot of times leaving the context that that data point is important in, right? And academics tend to criticize him because of that. But then for uh, for someone who's not an academic, right, I think Malcolm Gladwell's book also make a lot of sense. The good introduction into understanding business, into understanding what are the nuances of business. One last um, recommendation that I have is a book called Free, right, by Chris Anderson. Chris Anderson was the former editor of Wired. Just check if it is Chris Anderson. I'm not totally sure,
Free.
but Free, right? The book's name is Free, and in fact, this book was gifted to me by a friend, by a very dear friend, who had attended a conference of Chris Anderson where he was effectively giving out this book free, right? And the interesting thing about Free is it tells you about this world where we're getting a lot of things free, right? So for you and me, Gmail is free, right? uh, for a lot of us, as long as our requirement is within 40 minutes, Zoom is free, right? For us, multiple things, I mean, we watch YouTube for free, right? YouTube is more like an encyclopedia right now, right? If there's Google for search terms, then there is YouTube for anything else in the world. I can just search on YouTube and it gives me an encyclopedia of video content on anything and everything in this world, right? But then, is that all free, right? So that is what Chris Anderson questions in that. And I mean, now it is more or less, we realize that there is nothing called a free lunch, and We are conscious of that, but this was written at a time when Hotmail came in free, and things. The world was changing towards a world where people were providing things free. And so that was another book that I really liked. Uh, Fun books to read. I keep recommending this every place. Catch 22, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Nothing to do with business, nothing to do with anything else, but these are good books to read. They are the sort of books that if you read, you'll fall off your sofa laughing just because it was so funny. So,
And we all need a little bit of fun in our lives, definitely, in today's world. One thing that I would like to end this podcast with is what Victor said, rightly said, is if we understand the way that marketing is being done, we understand how it should not be done and the kind of messages that probably we shouldn't listen to. And that is a very empowering message, that when you understand that how fundamentally these things work, then you start to discern that what is maybe meant for you and what is not meant for you. And that is, for me, nothing less than a superpower. If you just understand that what is being targeted to you, that's a superpower in itself in today's world. And Rory Sutherland, I am a very big fan. That book Alchemy is phenomenal. That's phenomenal for anyone to read. And with that, I would like to thank you for appearing on the podcast and sharing your insights and wisdom with us. And it has been a
Arun,
pleasure,
I
and
think
hope so
your
we'll
video
often connect in the future
is
for
frozen.
such discussions.
Was okay. So Victor, I could see you move, so that means
Yeah. Yeah, it is Arun's video, I guess.
okay.
Yes.
I think you can see me right
I
now.
think his connection
Yeah.